We've gone through a pandemic. That was a huge disruptor. And now we're trying to readjust ourselves for the economy, the inflation, the recession, the war. And I think it's just the cycle that we go through. So what's the big deal? We're going to get through this. Already the U.S., and we're all in the U.S., I think, it's the strongest country in the world. Europe is in the recession. Russia is in the depression. The Middle East in this chaos. And Argentina won the World Cup. So I'm showing up as an investor for the last 30 years, consulting for as many years, coaching businesses for the last 15 plus years, mostly technology companies. And I started a mentoring program that we call Peers on Demand about 5 years ago. And I'm still doing that as a way to communicate and connect leaders with trusted advisors and develop business joint ventures, certainly refer business. He came up with, we want to find out who's the least productive team. And I thought, what an idiot. What are you talking about? And why would you go into that, the least productive team? So what do you do if you find that least productive? Do you boost them up? Do you throw them out? Do you just ignore it? So there's something going on, and I think the speaker went through that they went through ranking the teams, which is kind of a top-down approach, trying to figure out where do we get rid of the people, and they're thinking of getting rid of the people as well. They hired more because of the pandemic. Microsoft let go, and I think Facebook has already. And so Google's thinking about that, and it's threatening Google's environment. And so coming in with who is the best or least productive team in the organization is kind of abrasive, I think. Well, it comes from the principal, Sundai, I think is his name, the CEO. He's a technical guy. He's not a people guy. So he's thinking, let me look at it from a technical standpoint, from a product standpoint. Let's rank all our products from top to bottom, and we'll get rid of the bottom ones. Very simple. But it's a lot different with people. So the key there is to maybe that would give you some information in terms of where do we need to address. But my thought has always been work with the best performing people. And I think of the 20-60-20 rule. 20% of your people are going to be the top people. 60% are in between. They're transitioning, they're growing, they're expanding. And there's 20% that for whatever reason are not producing. And they may be thinking differently. And if you bring the right leader to the table, you could bring those people up at a higher level. So it's not a question of the people, it's a question of the leadership. And that's where the finger should be pointed at organizations. I think Google in particular, since we're talking about them, empowered the ability to help people get into a flow states, giving them one day out of the week that they could do anything. And out of that, they produce 55% of the products that generates the revenue for the Google organization. So they have done some really great things along the way. And what's shifted, I think, is that they're somehow pressured to generate more revenue. I'm not quite sure, but certainly Google's a big target, and already they mentioned ChatGPT. Already ChatGPT's come out, and that, from my use of it, it's like, this is very, very nice, very different, and I think very disruptive. And whether it disrupts Google, probably not, but certainly it's going to make an impact. So there are newer technologies that are coming out that are going to hinder the growth of Google. And Google's, of course, looking to expand their growth. Maybe they're flattened out. And so they have an excess of employees. And the tech industry, traditionally, because of the pandemic, had hired people because they could. Like, technology was ruling during the pandemic, so let's hire more technical people and give the people what they want. And until the pandemic is over, until we go, There are no new technical innovations, except Chat GPT is very cool. But I'm waiting for Apple to come again with innovations, and they're lagging behind. They're not talking until 2026. Hopefully 2023 will be some iteration. So the industry is going through iterations. There's nothing that clients are out there are looking for that's come out. And so my thought is that they're going through a cutting of the people, because what they found out is they can generate as much productivity with lesser amount of people. Cut 10 or 20% less and you still produce the same, which is, oh, how interesting. What I'm thinking is at some point there has to be somebody generating the new innovation ideas. And if you cut those people, that's probably where it got cut. So there's some transitions that the industry is going through that we're trying to at least weather through the economic situations what we're going through. And I think it's just a normal dip. And so I'm observing that, and how the conversation or the panelists that showed up is kind of, yeah, so what? They didn't give me anything different. They're certainly not initiating coaching because they're too busy governing what they need to do. When you coach somebody is when you have the thrust to go innovative and bring them together, get them to a flow state. So they're in transition. They're trying to find answers, and I think you're right about that, Robin, that they're throwing things out there, but they're old strategies that 20 years ago worked. In fact, 20 years ago is when I was using tools to monitor productivity. They don't know how to do that still. The leaders I've had coaches. They can afford the coaches. They've had it for 20 plus years. It's not that we want to coach leaders more. It's that we want to coach the rest of the organization. So if you get to mid-level managers, low-level managers, those are the ones that need to be empowered and coached. And I don't think it's reaching to that level. I don't know enough about Google, how extensive it is in terms of the coaching organization, but they haven't talked about that. If you can have a thriving organization, it's because the entire organization is thriving. They're being coached, they're being challenged, they're being put in a space that they need to get to a level of flow continuously, individually, as a team, and as an organization. And encouraging ownership. Now that one's a biggie. That one I think is coaching, ownership. If you have the mindset of ownership from the top, the middle, and the low levels, all up and down, ownership means that they take responsibility for what they do, they take responsibility for the results, and they take responsibility for continuously improving. And I think that's coaching too. For us, what's the opportunity? There's obviously challenges. And if we can get clarity about the challenges, then we can get clarity about the opportunities and how do we show up. And I think what applies to large organizations, middle, small organizations, it applies to people. We're talking about people. The only thing difference is that there's more of them in some organizations than others. So if you apply it to, let's say, a 10-person organization or a 1,000-person organization, or in some cases, like with Google, I think they have 13,000. The key is that a large organization is comprised of multiple teams. And the best functioning team is a team of 8 to 10 to 15 people. All of a sudden, that's a small company. And so if you work with the individual, get the individual to a level of empowerment, achievement, flow state. I call it flow state because I like the term and I think it's cool, and I don't think a lot of people seem to understand it enough. But flow state is continuously striving, getting 1% better each day, continuously. Taking a risk, not too much risk, but certainly making sure that you're not bored and not anxious, continuous flow. So as an individual understands that, then we could bring it to a team environment. Now that becomes a team of 8 to 10 to 15 people. That could be a small company. That could be a team. And an organization as big as Google is just comprised of multiple teams. And so the answer or the solution or the opportunity is coaching. It's really that coaching at the smallest possible level, and it bubbles up. The smallest possible level is the individual. And then the next is the team, and continuing to evolve to the entire organization. I think Sundar, the CEO of Google, I think is on the right direction. Let's find out where our teams are at is probably the best appropriate, not which is our least performing team, but where are they at now? And how do we get them so that they can expand and grow better and be more creative or be more productive? That's his objective. And I think he's got the right idea, probably the wrong approach. Well, part of the state of being in a flow uppermost is not only purpose, common purpose, but also collaboration. And you're right. I think in organizations, one of the speakers prior to this one mentioned that you may have product development produce this great product in their mind, and then they bring it to sales, and sales goes to their clients. The client says, "We don't want this. This is crap," and so they have a problem, and they give the problem back to. They treat it as a problem. It's probably a great opportunity. So they're bouncing these problems. It's not my problem. It's your problem. So yeah, that goes on. The key to that is collaboration. To be able to communicate, to be able to transfer from team to team, except for one situation. What's going on is you have the existing organization as it is and the future organization. So every company has, in essence, two directions. And the thought and the model that I'm pursuing is that if that's the case, they should have two separate organizations, one that protects the existing organization and thrives in it, and the other one that is developing, doesn't have a lot of resources, needs their own autonomy and to develop the future, almost separate. So in that situation, there may not be any collaboration except maybe resources of time and talent and money. So there's some changes going on because the company that can successfully create its replacement then will thrive into the future. Now, Apple is the one that really initiated that with Steve Jobs. When he invented the Mac, he went in and he created what he termed the pirates in the Navy. He said in a company, the company is the Navy, and within the company you have to have pirates that can go in and steal and borrow and create and produce their own thing. And I read that book also from another speaker, and I thought, oh, that's what's going on. We've got a duplicity of purposes in an organization. One is to protect it, like the Kodaks, and we don't want to be a Kodak or the Blockbuster. And the other one is the Apples of the world is very succeeding, and maybe that's the model because they're $1 trillion company, and they're continuously innovating and how they do that. I don't know enough about how they do that, but they're successful, although they haven't come out with a big announcement yet. I think they're in the process of trying to see what Meta and Facebook does with VR and trying not to duplicate that. So, and I think the rest of the industry is modeling Apple too, because everybody else seems to be falling by the wayside. So the point there is that there's some different opportunities showing up, different models, and to be able to get clarity about that, to be able to show up where the best opportunity might be for us, and I think for the organizations. And I do come back to coaching is fundamentally the key mainstay, as opposed to consulting, telling them what to do, as opposed to investing, throwing money at the problem, as opposed to mentoring, which is kind of passive. Coaches is much more proactive within an organization, and they're not getting enough coaching at the lower levels. And I think that's probably the opportunity that we have as coaches and as thought leaders. So here we have the scenario. We have companies that are struggling with their people, transitioning. They're putting some spy programs on their things, so just so they could be productive, and hoping that ideas and technology and productivity happens. Hoping is the same thing as praying; it just doesn't work. The thing that will work is if you go in through HR, because we've set the standard. I think HR is the point of entry because they have the responsibility for the wellness of the organization, of the people themselves. And also, they're the ones that come up with these tools and the programs. So let's have them invest in that and introduce artificial intelligence. Coaching artificial intelligence, which number one is easy to do. It's just a computer programs. It's very cost effectively. It's all over the place. It never sleeps. It's always there on a daily basis. They show up, and it's effective, more or less, depending on the individual. If you use it, it's effective. If you don't use it, it's not effective. But it's not just having one or two or three. Having, like I do, I've got three, almost four different AI coaching programs that I use on a daily basis. And I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. One gets to a point that I use it so I don't get bored enough. Then I jump to the other one. Then all of a sudden that stimulates me. Then I jump to the next one. Then I'm fully stimulated. So it's not one or the other. It's all three that I step into on a daily basis for the last few months. And I'm wondering, I thought, well, am I replacing myself? Who cares? It should be the same attitude with something that is there, a technology, a tool that we could use like a coaching AI tool that is always there. It helps us, it progresses so that it gets us to a human being. It's not to replace a human being, it's to get us to the human being so that we have quality, so that we show up with a flow state. You can, like Google has proven, that you could take a day off of the week and produce as much as you can for the rest of the week. The 20-80 rule. If you can be 20% focused in the flow state, you'll produce 80% of the work. How cool is that? So what does that mean? You could go to work on a Monday, produce all the work for the rest of the week. And here's the other part. Of course, companies are going to fight that, but already there's some thoughts of having a 4-day work week, which makes sense. Have the fifth day is just go out and think, go out and come up with ideas, and the rest of the 4 days that you show up, produce something. But here's the thing is that you produce more in 20% state flow than you do on the other 80%, which is just showing up, which is really what I call non-attention patterning. We're looking for ideas and to implement. So my thought is the future, fast-paced future, that we go to work 1 day a week, and then the other 4 days we just go out and gather ideas. Whether we check in or not, or physically, we don't have to. The thought, erroneously, I think, is that in order for us to be productive, innovative, we have to be in the same room, see ourselves, as much as positive aging or negative aging. And that's the crux of what's going on. Companies that are like Google is going through a negative aging. They're finding that what has worked before doesn't work anymore. And maybe Apple's going through positive aging where they are continuously innovating. And I think the blood flow of aging in an organization is innovation. If you continuously innovate, you're positively aging. If you're not, you're negatively aging or facing extinction. And the same is true for the individual. If we have positive aging, i.e. we eat healthy foods, we're thriving, we're going in a positive direction. Otherwise, we're in negative aging, where we could be living longer but not healthy. And I think that's the crux of this. The companies that we're talking about are living, but they're not healthy. We need healthy, positive aging.